welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I on the show have Team Sweden on the docket as we rank the top 10 players from every country. Well, at least every country with 10 players.
I was going to say, we're not doing Japan.
No. We need 10 players to be from that place. That's a requirement. But Sweden, fortunately, fits the bill. And so we are going to be ranking them. If you haven't listened to our top 10 of other countries, we just did the United States and Finland, Czech Republic, but also all 31 teams across the National Hockey League. Subscribe to the show, go back and find those episodes and enjoy. There is really nothing in there that is time sensitive, so you can always go back and just enjoy those episodes. So with that said, we always have a just missed on every single one of our rankings. Players that just did not make the cut. So Justin, hello.
Yeah, good morning.
And let's hear your just missed. Let's dive right in.
I've got 4 guys on my just missed.
There was some tight competition for that lower tier.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't disagree with you there. After I got past like number 7, it was just like, okay, these bottom 3 spots, like, it's tight. So I've got Nicholas Backstrom. Obviously, I think his production obviously is there, but to me, he kind of goes down a peg because he played with Ovechkin, and that's where he's getting most of his points from. So I couldn't justify putting him over a couple of these other guys.
His career is not really probably even close to being over.
Right, yeah.
So I think he could jump his way into the list. He just missed mine as well.
Okay. I've got Kent Nielsen, famous second-line center for the Oilers in the late 80s. He only got that 1 cup. But Matt Snaslin, and probably a guy who I found on a lot of lists, but his career was very, very short, unfortunately, cut short by an auto accident. That's Pelle Lindbergh,
yes.
that famous goaltender for the Philadelphia Flyers, who to me probably...
Won Rookie of the Year in 85-86 season. Very,
very good goaltender at the time, and probably still would have been good, moving forward in his career.
He still would have been good right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Very
35
athletic.
years later, he was going to still be dominant. No.
Yes.
The only other guy I have on my just missed Marcus Naslund.
Okay.
Who's the 3rd all-time goal scoring Swedish player with 395 goals.
All right. Yeah, I respect it.
Okay, well, let's go to your number 10.
All right.
Oh, and by the way, before we dive fully into the list, how many active players made your list?
Let's see here. We got... Literally, I've got 2.
Okay, I
active.
have 2 as well.
Okay.
So,
I'm guessing they're probably the same.
There are players right now, and it kind of like there's quite a few guys like on the U.S. one, and on Finland, where you're like, man, this guy's for sure going to be on this list someday, but just not there yet.
Yeah, there's quite a few active guys that I think maybe could, like, maybe you could talk about as a Benajad, maybe if he, ups his career.
Well, like Victor Hedman, he missed my list, right. And he's somebody who, I mean, if he goes and wins another Norris Trophy, or just like plays for another 5 years at a high level, suddenly you're or like goes and wins a Stanley Cup, maybe 2 Stanley Cups for the Tampa Bay Lightning, then you're really talking about him cementing himself into this list. But
yeah, another guy I'd love to maybe revisit in a decade from now, Robin Lehner, see where he's at, because he's a guy who I think could potentially crack this list. So
interesting. We would have never been saying that like 2 years ago.
No. But good on him. So all right, number 10 for me, probably a guy who, like most Americans, probably mispronounce his name. I honestly don't know how to pronounce it, and he probably got made fun of a little bit. It's Håkan Loob.
Håkan Loob.
Yeah, and again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Feel free to, tweet at us, let us know. But this guy basically came in the 80s. He's the first ever Swedish player to score 50 goals in a season, and he basically did it, 85 points in 79 games for the Flames. He helped them capture their first cup. And, boy, this guy was small, but he could skate. He could fly out there. And he ended up racking up 429 points in 450 games. And then literally just went over to the Swedish Elite League to finish out his career because, after he won the Cup in 89 with the Flames, he's like, hey, I've done it. Like, I'm still young. I can still compete. So he goes over to the Swedish Elite League and just basically puts up another 405 points in 501 games. So he was pretty dang good over there as well. Especially
in a league that was definitely more of a defensive league, too.
Right. Yeah, they're a low-scoring league for those who don't know, and still are to this day.
Still putting up 66 points in 40 games.
Yeah, so this guy, I mean, obviously he's just he's little unknown because obviously at this point Swedes weren't relatively abundant in the NHL at that time. So to me, he comes in at number 10.
Okay. Hockenlube did not make my list. Certainly could. I appreciate the fact that, he's the first 50 goal scoring Swedish player. Just missed my list because 450 games played is not anywhere near anyone on the list that made it for me. So it just kind of says, hey, you didn't play in the NHL for very long, so I don't know what would have happened to you at 30. I'm sure he would have been fine, but I just, when I see Gabe Landeskog has played 200 more games than you, and he still has such a long career ahead of him, it's just not enough games for me.
Fair enough. So who's your number 10?
My number 10 is a player that I'm sure you love, and that's former Detroit Red Wing. I guess he's sort of like a current, like he never left the Red Wings. He's just a Red Wing.
Technically, he's still being paid by the Red Wings. So
Detroit Red Wings superstar Henrik Zetterberg.
There you go.
Over 1,000 games played and almost 1,000 points. If he could have just, had a good back.
Boy, wouldn't that have been something?
He could have been much better than what he was. It's just the last 2 years of his career, he was so hampered by that back that, he could barely get up in the morning. He was getting like full on massages every day after game day. It's like, it was smart of him to call it a career. It's just sad that he wasn't able to get to 1,000 points because he for sure would have.
Yeah, it's always sad when you get guys like that, like their careers cut. His career wasn't exactly cut short, but it could have been something more. Yeah. Again, there's guys that. Yeah,
drafted in 99. He played a full season in 2017-18. So,
right.
He played a long, long time. I guess he didn't make it to the NHL till he was 22, but still, that's 16 seasons is how long he lasted. That's a great, fantastic career. Won him that Stanley Cup in 2008. Never got the chance to go for it in 2002 like Zetterberg or like Datsuk did.
Yeah.
Getting that year
Thanks
ahead of
to
him.
Detroit signing all those veteran Luke Robitaille, Brett Hall, and then again you've got Detroit's mantra of always just like, we're going to let guys over-ripen in the minors, and it worked out well, but
it certainly worked out. And let's be honest, if that lockout year hadn't have happened, Zetterberg gets 1,000 points, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Okay, you're number 9.
All right, number 9 for me, Daniel Alfredsson.
Okay.
The longtime captain of the Senators and
second all-time Swedish scorer.
Yeah, I'm not as high on him as most people. He was consistent, right? Like some other guys on this list, just consistently putting up points year after year. Obviously had a lot of international success. Won gold in 2016, the silver in 2014, and then won, some silver and bronze in the World Championships, but never got that elusive Stanley Cup. And when you look at a guy, obviously he got the Calder and he got the Messier Award, but not any, big hardware, right? Not any like notable hardware pieces like the Selke or the Hart Trophy for that matter. And but again, just a model of consistency. And I remember his last season coming over to Detroit. I'm like, wow, okay, we're still recycling the guys on their last leg, like Mike Modano, and bringing them in. But you know what? He was fun to watch. He was entertaining, and he still had it at 41 years old, and still brought it again. 49 points in 68 games for the Wings, but never a big goal scoring machine. Only he got 40 twice. 30, 2 other times after that. It was
more like, hey, I'm going to score you 20, 25 goals.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put up 50 assists.
Yeah. But he did
win the Calder.
Right.
And the Messi and the Clancy, but
Yeah, I forgot about that Clancy word. And then again, second team All-Star once, and that was about it. And again, you've talked about it numerous times about being like the best at your position. And unfortunately, I think he just got caught in an era where you had guys like Rick Nash scoring 50 goals, or Jaromir Jagr and Jerome McGinley's, and so just never really was the guy at his position.
Well, and he was stuck in Ottawa, right? Like Ottawa actually had some very good teams. I mean, Ottawa was finishing top in the Eastern Conference a few times, and other than 2006-07 when they go to the Stanley Cup Finals and lose in 5 games to the Anaheim Ducks,
right?
He didn't have super deep playoff runs. They made the playoffs pretty much every single year that he was there. From the time that he's 24 years old, it wasn't until he was 32. That was the lockout year. It wasn't until he was 36 in 08-09 that they finally missed the playoffs, from 96-97 to 08-09. So
right,
pretty good. I mean, he did have a couple. He had one third round in 2002-03, but he just didn't seem to be able to break that consistency in the playoffs, at least from a team perspective. From his perspective, he was fine.
Yeah, no fault of his.
It was just kind of, hey, it's Ottawa, and they were kind of seen as the playoff chokers, but unfortunately, he was the captain of that team, and so he sort of gets lumped into, he was a really nice regular season player, but for the most part, he wasn't great in the playoffs, and for the most part, he just couldn't get it done. Like, that was how he was seen.
Right.
Like, the guy who never really got it done.
Kind of like Tuukka Rask, I think of, same aspect. Guy who can't get it done, right?
Yeah, but on a much better team.
Right.
The Bruins probably much more consistent. But, yeah. Sure. Daniel Alfred, I think for the most part, just gets lost in Ottawa.
Sure.
Yeah. It's Ottawa.
I know. You feel bad for guys that go there, and because they've had some really talented players over the years, but they just...
Yeah.
Terrible management and ownership, honestly.
Yeah. Daniel Alfredson was my number 8.
Okay.
My number 9, another Ottawa Senator, former Senator Erik Karlsson.
Okay.
Coming in at number 9. So I have Karlsson a little further down my list. I think that there's a chance he could move up. He obviously has had some of the greatest seasons for a defenseman, or for anyone from Sweden, but... And has the Norris trophies, but he just hasn't played long enough. And as of recently, he had some great seasons, but now, as of recently, he's not looking like he's going to be this guy who's going to do this for another 5 or 6 years. It looks like he's slowed down,
right,
and has kind of, in his late 20s, fallen off a bit.
Boy, let's hope not. I'm sure the San Jose Sharks hope not. Just gave him $11 million, so...
Yeah. and he did win the silver in Sochi, Russia,
right,
in the Olympics. So, did he make your list?
He did, yeah.
Okay,
he's a couple spots higher.
Okay. Well, let's do your number 8.
Number 8, yeah, Henrik Zetterberg. You talked about him. For me, this is a guy probably... outside of one or two other Swede players here, he's the one I watch the most out of all these Swedish players.
I'm in that same boat too.
Yeah, and I remember his 2008 Stanley Cup Conn Smythe, finish, and legit. Obviously, part of me wanted it to go to Osgood because Ozzy came in and took over for Hasek, and he put up still a .930 save percentage. He was unreal.
Yeah.
But Zetterberg's work in the finals, shutting down Crosby, and I remember that everybody points to it, that 5-on-3 penalty kill where he was just all over the ice. And again, a guy who still at that time was still having issues with his back. Obviously they weren't as bad, but I mean, he just did everything.
Was he having issues with his back in 2008?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was going back. So but yeah, this guy, he was just all over the ice, playing such a key role defensively and offensively for this team. And that's just what he was really known for. Now, he didn't really get any other big hardware because, unfortunately, lucky for me, he got to play with another great defensive forward, Pavel Datsyuk, who stole a lot of those Selkies.
Yep.
I'm sure Zetterberg probably would have got one if, Datsyuk hadn't been around, but... it is what it is, and you look at, there's another guy on my list who probably could have got some more hardware had another couple, players not been around the league, but that's always the case. So,
is Zetterberg the best defensive forward of all time from Sweden?
From Sweden? No, I don't think so.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm curious to see who you say is the best.
Yeah,
are they? I assume they appear later in your list.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
there's
All
one
right.
guy I think probably, and maybe it's more because of how he plays offensively. But
All right,
we'll see.
Well, my number 8 was Daniel Alfredsson.
Yep.
We've already spent some time on him. Let's go to your number 7.
Number 7, Erik Karlsson for me.
Okay.
And again, I kind of talked about this a little bit with Alfie, but obviously Karlsson was a guy who was the best at his position and was for quite a few years, and he really kind of redefined that offensive defenseman sort of role. And now I honestly think it's because of him that we look at the defensive position and basically give out the that Norris Trophy to the guy who accumulates the most points, right?
Yep.
Not necessarily because of their defensive game. And again, Erik Karlsson's gotten better at it, especially in his later 20s. Early on in his career, though, he just wasn't that defensive defenseman type guy. He was just, I'm going to go out there and score 80 points.
Didn't need him to be.
Right, exactly. And unfortunately, he played with an Ottawa team that really wasn't that great either.
And still took them within an overtime goal away from the Stanley Cup Finals.
Damn Penguins. It's crazy to think, they really got that close. And, again, he got the Norris twice. He got second place 1 year, or 2 years, I'm sorry. So, again, this guy could potentially have 4 Norrises on his shelf. He was just that good offensively. And I'm hoping for the Sharks anyways he can get back to form and, maybe find his way a little bit more now that hopefully his injuries are behind him, especially with that Achilles issue he was having.
And I mean, hey, here we go. Nice long break.
Right.
Erik Karlsson might have 9 months off by the time we're back.
That's crazy to think about, right? We've been at a 4-month break before training camp got back. So
my number 7 I have is an NA because I have number 6 is Henrik Sedin and Daniel Sedin tied at 6. So I made it so that there was no 7 because that's
okay. That's
2 players. Yeah,
well, that's fair. I actually did them both in the same spot. So yeah.
So we both talked about it before. Just how can you not bunch them together? They have to be. There's just no way around it. They're the 4th and 5th highest scorers in Swedish history. I mean, Daniel Sedin only played 24 fewer games than Henrik Sedin. Their careers, they played together almost the whole entire time that they were on the ice. They only averaged 29-second difference over the course of their entire career in terms of on ice. They both basically have the same power play minutes. It's a career where they were just one. They played as one. They won as one. They lost as one. I mean, all their success, I think. The Canucks' success at that time towards, you have to look at these 2 guys, and I think the reason why maybe the Canucks team wasn't better. I remember reading the year that they lost to the Kings in the first round in 7. They lose in 7 games. Was it 7 games or was it faster than that?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I don't remember. It was the year the Kings were the 8th seed.
Oh right,
and the Canucks were the 1. And I remember one of the 2 twins, I don't know which one, I remember them saying, I don't know, we don't understand why people are so crazy about these Stanley Cup playoffs.
I do not remember that.
They're just games. It was something along those lines. And I remember going, that's why they're incredible players. They obviously have a high level of competition, but maybe you just aren't willing to, some players, it seems like they lay their life out on the line to win the Stanley Cup.
Patrice Bergeron playing with a punctured lung kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. And that to me maybe is the difference. A player sometimes not feeling the same weight of the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, you don't push yourself a little bit more. Much
more into, we want to win the gold in the Olympics. Is my guess. That internationally, that tends to be a more important thing for some different players. And of course, they did win the gold in 2006. So
right, yeah, that's great. I actually had not heard that before. I'm surprised I haven't, because, like,
I'll never forget hearing that and going, that explains everything.
Yeah, that would. I mean, really, if you don't have that drive or that effort, that extra push to go a little bit harder that some guys can. Wow. Okay.
I guess it's not to say that maybe they didn't learn to understand that, but it wasn't. There's like, I feel like from the time that I was old enough to understand what a hockey puck was, like, I never played at a high level hockey, but I wanted to win the Stanley Cup. And
sure.
That was like the pinnacle of anything hockey. Like, that's always what you played for on the street. Whereas that may not be the same motivation for other players. And so then when there's no real pay benefit in the playoffs, it's just, hey, you're playing to win this whole thing, and it's the Stanley Cup, and it doesn't maybe have the same meaning. Yeah, maybe it does go to, show why maybe they didn't have the same level of playoff success that some other guys have had.
Wow. I'll tell you what, their goaltender, I'd love to hear what Mr. Roberto Luongo would have said about that. But again, too, I mean, now, maybe they say that after a loss, they're frustrated, right, and they're trying to put it in reason. But yeah, that's still something you don't come out and say, regardless, if you're frustrated.
Yeah, I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can't find the proof that they said that.
I believe it.
I'm confident that I wasn't like dreaming or anything.
That's crazy.
All right. Well, that's my 6-7. Basically.
Okay.
Who is your number
6?
Borje
Salming.
All right.
Defenseman for the Toronto.
Yes.
Yeah, the Toronto Maple Leafs. This guy is kind of like Alfredsson in the fact that he grew up in an era where he was never considered the best at his position because he played with
Bobby Orr.
Yeah, Bobby Orr and Larry Robinson right in front of him. And it's like, okay, you've got these two legends of the game who have about 30 Norris trophies between them. And it's like, how do you get the spotlight on you? And I felt kind of bad for him because he's such an incredible player. If you really go back and look at his numbers, they're just amazing. And he had 7 straight years to start his career where he was top 5 in Norris voting.
And only one of those years was he 5. Right. All the rest of them, he was 4 or 3 or 2.
Yeah, this guy, I mean, to me, is one of the most underrated defensemen in, history. And I don't know if maybe he's underrated because everybody knows how good he was, but he doesn't get the same accolades. He doesn't get the same, he doesn't get put in that discussion like some of these other great players do. And to me, he's one of the better defensemen to ever play the game. And right now, to me, he is obviously the second best defenseman to ever play for Sweden, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one day Victor Hedman might be in that conversation, but right now, to me, it's Borje Salming.
Yeah, and I mean, Borje Salming also was not on the greatest of teams.
No.
Really, he made it past the first round 4 times in his career. Those Toronto teams just didn't really have it.
Right.
Just no other way to describe it. But Borje Salming, also really the first Swedish superstar in the NHL.
There you go.
And so I think he's my number 5. So
okay.
We have him ranked pretty similarly. Not only is Borje Salming one of the best Swedish players to ever play, and I mean, defensively speaking, he definitely was one of those guys that helped to change the position from a defensive only to this offensive type of position where you could produce offense from the back end. And he comes into the league only, I think, a year younger than Bobby Orr. He just happens to come in when he's 22 years old because, hey, he's from Sweden and he doesn't have the same type of exposure. And he doesn't start his career scoring a ton. And then, once he's 25, 26, 27, he puts up 4 straight 70-plus point seasons. And that's kind of where those are his prime seasons. But he also is like a cultural icon in Sweden. I mean, you go over there. I remember my dad going to Sweden and coming back with like some Borje Salming, some like clothing line that he has, and he's like, it's everywhere. You can't go into stores and not see these Borje Salming. I guess it's just Salming is the line, but I mean, he is somebody who has infiltrated not just the, hey, he's a great player, but also the culture. And if you're from Sweden, I think that there's a chance if you're from Sweden, you're ranking him higher, especially if you're somebody who watched him play. You might have him in your top 3 on this list.
Wow. All right.
Okay. Well, he's my number 5. So
okay.
let's roll into the top 5.
Yeah, my number 5, the Sedin twins. I've got them both at 5.
Okay.
Yeah. We spent plenty of time talking about them, and so I won't bore you with the details about their career. We know what they did. They're just fantastic players. Their chemistry is unbelievable. And I remember this play they used to always do, which was one of my favorite. And I remember them burning Detroit quite a few times on it. But like one of the Sedins would basically dump it and play it off the boards, and the other one would just shoot down like a rocket and just get past the defenseman, because they're like, okay, the goalie's going to come out. Well, the keeper's not coming out because they're coming in so quick, and they would just take the puck and score. And it was just annoying, but it was so effective. Especially in Detroit, too, where the boards were more lively. So
Yes. At the Joe, the boards were quite crazy.
Yeah. That's my number 5.
Perfect. Okay, so my number 5 is Borje Salming.
Perfect.
Number 4 is my only goaltender on the list.
Same.
And that's Henrik Lundqvist. By far the most winningest Swedish goaltender of all time. 887 games played. 459 wins. Second most is Tommy Salo with 210. So he more than doubles up the next guy. He's just far and away the best Swedish goaltender to ever play, and unfortunately does not have his Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it's sad because I don't think he will ever get a Stanley Cup. Unless he plays a backup role here for quite a while in New York, I don't think he's ever going to get it. And his best bet will maybe be to try to convince them to trade him in the offseason. But we'll see how that pans out. And I don't think he's going to get traded, but we'll see. But again, to me, he's a guy I remember so many, on a couple occasions, literally putting this Rangers team on his back and carrying them to the finals. I remember against the LA Kings, and I was just so pissed when Alec Martinez scored that goal. I'm like, dude, there's not one guy. He was like the Dave Anderchuk. Even though he wasn't that old, but he was just like a guy who I look at and I'm like, he deserves a freaking cup, like a Ray Bork, and I'm like, dude, just give him the freaking cup.
Unfortunately, the Rangers probably not in a position to go that deep again for a little while, and you're right,
unless they get really lucky and maybe what's his face Sorkinson steals a couple rounds. But
here's the interesting thing. Just to go side note,
sure.
Henrik Lundqvist may not be protected for the expansion draft.
Yeah, and if I'm the Rangers, I'm not protecting him either.
No.
So, because you want Sorkinson.
I don't know what his no move looks like. I'm not looking at cap friendly right now, but can you imagine if he just agreed to waive it and said, "Okay, I'll go to Seattle," and then Lundqvist pulls a Marc-Andre Fleury, gets to go and kind of revitalize himself somewhere else on the complete opposite side of the country. That would be fun.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he'll be at is 39 or 40 years old at that point, so maybe not as much of a revitalization. But,
whereas Fleury was 35 when he went to Vegas. Yeah.
But I will say, Lundqvist, best dressed guy in hockey, hands down, and he actually plays electric guitar in a band too.
Wow.
Yeah. Most people don't know that.
The Lundqvist Staters.
I have no idea what the band's name is, but I'm sure it's
top
fantastic.
3.
Yeah, let's move on.
I think we'll have the same top 3, just a matter of the order. My 3 is Peter Forsberg.
Okay.
My guess. So I'll go Forsberg, Sundin, Lidstrom. So I guess Lidstrom, Sundin, Forsberg is my 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I've got Lindstrom at number 1. Forsberg at 2, though.
Yeah. Then that's typical to a lot of lists that I've seen.
And I guess maybe that's more because I watched Forsberg a lot more than I watched Sundin, and unfortunately, I think especially with Sundin or Forsberg, you can flip either one of these guys. But obviously, Sundin had the longer career. Forsberg, I think, during his time was more dominant. And it's funny, too, because these guys are actually tied to each other when you think about Sundin and Forsberg, and you kind of think, okay, how? Well, it's Sundin that won Forsberg some cups because he got traded, from Quebec to, I can't remember what team it was, but anyways.
Toronto?
Yeah, to Toronto for Wendell Clark, who played one season in Quebec, and before they moved to Colorado, Quebec flipped Clark to the New Jersey Devils for Claude Lemieux. So because of Sundin, Claude Lemieux comes to, and at the time...
And then Wendell Clark comes back to Toronto.
Right, yeah. There's a little bit of tie in there with both these guys. But, I mean, Sundin, though, you want to talk about a model of consistency. This guy, to me, every single year I look at his numbers, and it's just like consistently point per game every single season. Obviously, he had that one, that 114-point season. But outside of that, and, especially in the 90s, too, when points were a little bit more scarce, he was still, 80, 70, 90 points every single season without a doubt. It's crazy.
Yeah, and he never really got any recognition at all. Like, truly no recognition. I mean, he was 8th in Hart Trophy voting one time in 01-02. And that's that, like, he was out top 12, 15, 20 here and there. He was only a second team All-Star twice. He would never really in consideration for any kind of like Selke. The highest he ever got was 37th in 02-03.
Got 70th in the Lady Byng Trophy.
Or 32nd, I guess, in 07-08.
No, 37th. Yeah, but in 2007-08, he finished 70th in Lady Byng voting.
Oh, 70th. Oh, wow. Yeah, 70th.
Got that one third place vote, I'm sure.
Some Toronto guy.
Probably.
Like, the guy just did not get the kind of recognition that he should have. And a lot of people, especially in Toronto in the 90s, did not like that he became the captain. There was a very prejudiced type of, like, he's not Canadian. And it was definitely like a Don Cherry driven conversation that happened.
Sure.
Like, didn't really like the fact that there was, you still had Doug Gilmour on the team, but they made Sundin the captain. There was a lot of controversy. And people he was the nicest freaking guy. Like, I think everyone loved him. Everyone on the team knew why he was the captain. There was just this weird prejudice towards him. And I think that it really transferred over to the reporters, which are the ones who vote on all these trophies. And I think for whatever reason that just, he never got that type of recognition, despite the fact that he point per game player when it was pretty freaking hard to be a point per game player. Go back and look at each year and who's in the top 10 of scoring. You will find Sundin in the top 10 of scoring every year. Pretty much every single year he's in the top 10 of scoring. All the way to when he's even in his mid 30s, he's still one of the top scoring players in the NHL. And constantly putting up 30 goals. Like, he had 30 goals every single year in his career, except for basically 4 times. 4 times? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
4 times. The rest of the time, over 30 goals. Oh, my goodness. I mean, and I'm not including the final year with Vancouver. That year doesn't count.
No.
He never played for Vancouver.
Just like Wendell Clark never played for... No, I'm just kidding. Quebec. But, yeah. Doesn't count.
Yeah. Sundin, to me, the best of the... He wasn't more talented than Forsberg. I agree with you. Forsberg had that, especially that like 02-03 year, the year where he wins the Hart. I mean, Forsberg was absolutely dominant. He could do everything. He just didn't last very long.
Yeah, unfortunately, the injuries.
So to me, basically Forsberg played almost half the amount of games that Sundin
about 60%. Yeah.
So to me, that's that is definitely a factor. I mean, yeah, did he have great success? Sure, but that's because he was on a team with one of the great, like probably top 5 best players of the 90s and early 2000s, Joe Sakic.
Yeah, but I mean, to Forsberg's defense, they never really played on a line together that much.
No, but no, not at all, actually.
Right,
but
they were both centers.
Forsberg was the second line center.
Right. he was an Evgeny Malkin, basically, is what he was.
Right. Yeah.
But it's when Sakic wasn't the guy, Forsberg would step up, and I remember watching him, and Forsberg, to me, is probably my favorite defensive forward for, Sweden because of how he controlled the puck and how he, because of his physicality. I remember Forsberg would literally, he would have the puck, or if you had the puck, he would literally just come up to you, shoulder you. You wouldn't really fall over, but he would legit just like move you to the side, and you would have no control over this at all, and you would just lose the puck at that point, and he would just take it from you, just, okay, good, I'm going to go the other way, and then dish it off to somebody else, and they're going to score because I'm that good. And he just made it look so effortless to me. Obviously, I think, Zetterberg had the hustle, but Forsberg just made it look like he wasn't even trying. He was just that good at it. And so, yeah, and again, the points, we know the totals. Obviously, I think the point per game pace, just obviously Forsberg was much better. And I think he had a little bit more, longevity to his career, not all the injuries, we'd be, maybe spitting out a different tune. And it's funny because every time Forsberg got injured, he'd come back and be just as dominant, and then get injured, come back and be just as dominant. And so it's like, okay, well, is it the injury, or is it just, is he just really that good?
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas Sundin, from the time he was 19 till he was the 01-02 season, he missed 16 games.
Yeah, he was Iron Man, for sure.
He pretty much played, and then even after that, the lowest amount of games he ever played in a season was 70, and that's kind of towards the end of his career. And he was a big man. He's 6'4", 6'5", 230 pounds. Even as the league started to get a little bit faster and there was less clutch and grabbing, he's still putting up over 30 goals. Anyways, Matt Sundin, he's all time. He's got to be my favorite all time.
No, I don't blame you either.
So and there's that too. But I look at the games played and the total impact on everything that he was able to do because he played for so long, almost 1,350 games. And I think he would have been on Team Sweden when they won the gold. Yeah,
he was. Yeah.
So
he wasn't the number one guy, but
no.
Yeah.
By that point, he's 35 years old. Yeah, but he was still a pretty darn good player.
Yeah, he was.
And that leaves us with Nicklas Lidström.
Yeah, the captain of that Swedish team that won that gold. So
yes,
yeah, was very happy to see that. I remember they had 5 Red Wing players on that team: Lidström, Holmstrom, Zetterberg, Samuelsson. These guys were very dominant.
Yeah, Samuelsson.
Yeah, Michael Samuelsson. Guys forget about him. He was a great depth player for the Wings. But what's there to say about Lidström that hasn't already been said, right? He had 10 freaking All-Star number 1 votes. He came in at second All-Star twice in his career, 7 Norris trophies, a Conn Smythe, first ever European-born captain to win a Stanley Cup. Guy's incredible.
Yeah, and I think because he was so good, that to me is why there are so many good Swedish defensemen in the league now.
Yeah.
I think there just is, obviously there's some level of like, hey, there's some really great coaching defensively. Their leagues are very defensive, so they learn how to play that way. But I think a lot of guys grew up idolizing and watching Nicklas Lidström, and so you have more Swedish guys who said, I want to be a great defenseman. Whereas in Canada, there's not great defensemen from Canada and the U.S. and other countries, but I think when the best players from your country play a certain position, you're probably more likely to get the other best players growing up wanting to play the same positions as them. And because Lidström is far and away the best Swedish player of all time, and then even you're saying, Peter Forsberg, another guy who kids would have been watching, he also so good defensively, and Sundin too. Sundin is the all-time shorthanded goals leader for Sweden as well. So you've got your top 3 players, and the list goes on and on of these great defensive forwards as well from Sweden. There's something in the water over there that makes some great defensive forwards, I guess.
Yeah, they train them right. And Lidström, to me, it's just so funny how effortlessly he made the game seem defensively, right? And
he never made a mistake.
No, it's crazy to me because, early on in his career, right, what boggles my mind, when he was, in his early 20s in Detroit, when they won that first Stanley Cup, he was paired with Vladimir Konstantinov, who was probably one of the best hitters, the best bruisers this game has ever seen. And, I remember one season, Konstantinov finished with a plus 60 and Lidström was like a plus 40 something. They were so dominant. And then of course, Konstantinov's, career gets derailed, but I often like to think how much more dominant could Lidström have been if he had that solid guy to pair with through his entire career, like that consistent guy to pair with. Like,
see, I don't think they would have gotten Chris Chelios if they had Constantine.
No, probably not. Yeah, they would have had that guy back there.
And I do think that Chris Chelios is the better defenseman.
Probably. But you never know what his career could have been again.
Sure.
But again, that's hearsay. And then later on in Lidstrom's career, obviously, he's not as fast as he was, but he still tailors his game to play so smooth and to not make mistakes and make that outlet pass so easy. And
he can make that pass from like behind the net.
Oh, I know, crazy,
just right on a guy's.
2 blue lines.
Yeah.
Great. Once they got rid of that red line, he was just lights out, with that deep outlet pass. And even at 35, he still manages to finish with 80 points in 80 games. It's ridiculous. So, 40 years old, 62 points in 82 games. So,
yeah,
still had it.
Yeah. Yeah, even as a 41-year-old, still scored 11 goals. It's pretty good. And 5th in Norris Trophy voting.
Right.
His final season in Detroit.
With 34 points.
Yeah, pretty good. I'm sure he could have kept playing. I'm
Probably.
Sure of it.
Yeah. But he was one of those guys that did everything he needed to, got all the accolades, and, he left the game before the game left him.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely. All right, well, there's our top 10 Swedish NHL players of all time. Let us know what you thought of our list at OT Hockey Talk. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. And, that's it for the show. We look forward to talking to you guys again very soon as NHL training camp rolls on.